Each painting begins obviously with an idea for a set. You might walk down the street and see a location that's absolutely perfect, but the rules I've given myself that I want to do everything within the studio, and I think the fact that nothing exists outside of the studio space in terms of the content of the paintings changes the reading of them massively. The set effectively does the narrative for the image for me. As soon as you recognize or see the place in which it's set, you start to have certain associations as to what kind of place it is, what might be going on, etc. And then once you stick figures within that, that's a further layer of narrative. But that's all that I need to do, is just putting those components together creates all of these other associations and resonances. And it means that when I have actors in the set, I can let very incidental things happen. I can let them behave in such a way that they can take the image in a place that I didn't know that it was going to go. And I end up with a painting that is very different by the time I finish making it to the one that I thought that it might be when I started. There's some that quite clearly state the fact that this is all a construction. There are others like Matinee. In the background there you can see little details behind the girl's feet. There's the two-dimensional cardboard cutout trees that are placed inside the studio. They're very subliminal, quiet little clues as to the fact that this is all constructed. I think all images ultimately are constructed at some level. They have to be. I'm very interested in sort of just setting up questions and creating doubt within the way that one might look at a picture. The group series, the Another Place series that dealt with a cinematic environment and made cinema the subject of the imagery, I was dealing with fiction in quite an explicit way. It then gave me the confidence with this new series, Mittelland, to actually say to myself, well, what happens if I don't use what could be regarded as quite sensational material, being cinematic material, but actually use all of those things to do very quiet things, to work on a very epic scale, but make images of very intimate and almost banal and mundane moments. The idea that you would have this one-to-one life-size space that you engage with in front of the paintings, but to then have very quiet, almost faux documentary moments, has ended up giving this group of works for me more power, even though that they're much quieter. I like to kind of render paint in the way that the eye sees, which is contingent and fleeting and just selecting enough. And that's ultimately the way that I go about making the pictures. I don't have particular sort of formulae or a style that I follow. Every painting I make feels like the first one I've ever made. I have to learn my way into the picture. But what I look for is an economy of touch that does just enough for your eye to believe it. Painting is one of the worst ways of representing the now. It's slow, it takes a long time to do. Film and photography fulfill those functions far, far better. But I think its obsolescence is now what actually frees it. It's no longer expected to be a standard for the real in the way that photography still is. The status of a photograph as a reliable document has been brought into question because we can now manipulate it, but we still believe a photograph. And this idea that images are somehow constructed at their very core gives painting an honesty, because it's so clearly made. It's so clearly inept at representing the real that it starts to ask other questions. All of the elements that I used to think were obsolete about painting and the reason not to do it are now the very reason that I want to do it.